Joining me now for more, Ivan Eland, Senior Fellow at the Independent Institute, with some analysis here. So, Ivan, it's been 60 days. War Powers Act gives a deadline. I haven't heard the president running to Congress asking for any kind of approval or declaration of war or sense that the NATO mission is ending. Is this breaking the law?
Yes, it's illegal and unconstitutional. And it's not the first president to have done it, but it's clearly a move in the direction of more executive power and more the executive usurpation of the congressional war-making power, which is clearly in the United States, the Constitution, the founders spent a lot of time on this at the original convention. It's probably the most important issue they've addressed, and it's very important to the Republic, and they wanted to make sure that executive branch, because they had a bad experience with the kings of Europe taking their countries to war and all the costs falling on the average person in blood and treasure. So they put the requirement, and the most important requirement of the Constitution is declaring war, and we don't do that anymore. So
yeah, so why doesn't anyone care? Is my next question. I mean, Congress, you have a few members. You have 6 Republican senators that sent a letter to Obama saying you're breaking the law. We have a few other outspoken members of Congress, but you have really no push from congressional leadership to enforce this?
Well, this has been occurring since 1950, when Harry Truman was the first president to run a large undeclared war, and so people have sort of gotten used to it. That's one problem. The second problem is, if you're a congressman or woman, you don't want to be tagged with responsibility for the success or failure of this. If this
is that what this is about?
Yes,
abdicating responsibility?
Yes.
Why do you think that? What's your evidence of that?
Well, because people, they want to take credit. If it goes well, they'll praise the president, or if it goes well badly, they can criticize him. But if you have a vote on a declaration of a war or any sort of authorization for that, they have to go on record as either opposing it or supporting it, and therefore, they can get blamed by their constituents one way or the other. So just let the president take responsibility, and we'll be kibitzers on the side and say he did a great job or he didn't do a good job.
Yeah, the Constitution, of course, has always been important. It is what this country was founded upon, but it's seen this renewed resurgence where you always see lawmakers quoting from it. You see the Tea Party worshiping it. I mean, there is a renewed obsession with the Constitution. So is this a kind of a sign that matters less than politics?
Well, I think you do see some of the Tea Partiers like Ron Paul and Rand Paul worrying about this, but more Tea Partiers should get involved in this because they're more involved in taxes and stuff. But this is a much more important issue for the Republic, and we've gone way off the deep end towards executive rule, and that's not a good thing for a republic.
And a couple of things on that. You mentioned that other presidents have not followed the War Powers Resolution, but from what I understand, the only president that broke the 60-day rule was Bill Clinton during Kosovo, but even then he still went to Congress for funding, so he did at least go to Congress. Is this a new precedent?
Yes, it is. I mean, the precedent that Harry Truman set, the War Powers Act wasn't in force then. It came after Vietnam when they got disgusted with Lyndon Johnson and Nixon. So, yes, Clinton did. That's exactly what happened. But I think Obama is in new territory since he's not going to get special funding approved like Bill Clinton did. So he's gone farther than Clinton. And of course, George Bush, for all his failings, he did get congressional authorization for Afghanistan and Iraq, and he was the champion of executive power, but Obama has really gone further in this case than Bush ever went.
Couple things on that. Why is he getting a free pass? I don't feel like we're seeing that much about it or criticism. And what does this say about a president that campaigned on, A, not getting involved militarily when you weren't attacked, ending U.S. wars, and following the law? I mean, he had a soundbite that we played at the beginning of the show where he said that we will be ruled by law, we will no longer violate the constitutional law. That's not who we are as a country, but it seems to be who he is as a president, if this is an example.
Well, he's a constitutional law professor, and he made the statement that we shouldn't be going to war unless Congress approves it, unless we're attacked, the country is attacked, which is what the Constitution said, and the War Powers Act also says that. So there's no no excuse for him doing this. I mean, he knows better, and it's just a case of he was in the opposition before when George Bush was president and conducting wars. Now he was the anti-war president, but now he has one more war than George Bush. He continued both of Bush's wars and has now started a third one. So there's really no excuse for this at all.
And just bigger picture, when you look at a country that is involved in 3 wars, spends more money on defense than any other country, has $14 trillion in debt, with lawmakers unable to come to any consensus on how to tackle that, where does this put the country on a trajectory on? I mean, does this put us in a place where we can just perpetually be at war? Because it seems that there's one after another of these laws when it comes to declaring war, getting money for war, getting approval for war, that are either not enforced, disregarded, made bills so that they don't matter.
Well, this is what the founders worried about, the U.S. becoming an empire, which we have become an empire in the post-World War II era. And I think we could go the way of the Soviet Union, the way of the Roman Empire, the way of the British and French empires, after World War II. They just couldn't, and many empires have failed because they just financially exhaust themselves. And I think we're headed toward that now. And we're certainly spending way too much on defense, given the fact that we have yawning budget deficits and huge piling up national debt.
Yet it keeps getting green-lighted and laws don't get enforced. I want to thank you so much for giving us that perspective on this. That was Ivan Eland, Senior Fellow at the Independent Institute.